We know it seems complicated, but it isn't. And we know it's hard for you to say, I just want to do what feels good, because sometimes you feel that as a mother, you're required to do things that you don't really want to do. And you live in a real world, and so do your children. And they can't just go around just only doing what they want to do. Or can they? They just can't go running around doing only what they want to do, because sometimes you got to do things that you don't want to do. So you want to know what we think about that? We say, if you want to do it. And if you don't want to do it and you need to do it, find a way to want to do it before you do it. Find the path of least resistance in it. And sometimes that takes a little while. Esther wants to be here more than life itself. This is life to her. Does she want to get on Southwest Airlines? Not really. Not really. She'd rather drive. But it's a long way from there to here. And so what's the path of least resistance? 2 hours on the airplane or 3 days on the road? You see what we're getting at? And so she makes a list. The morning she flew, in fact, Southwest Airlines, and she made a list of positive aspects. A list of positive aspects. Because she wanted to be in sync with what she was going to do. She knew she was going to fly. She wanted to line up with what she was going to do. Now, if she couldn't line up with it, we'd encourage her not to get on the plane, because it's going to crash. Oh. But if she can line up with it with a few simple things like, I so appreciate that business that has those planes in flight. I appreciate their organization and the way they line things out. I appreciate the fact that they're going to so many places that I want to go. I really appreciate the fact that this is a direct flight. I love flying with Michelle, who is so light and happy and nice to be with. I like the opportunity of stepping into this moment in time, this now, where I can rendezvous with things that are a surprise and delight. I adore getting out where people are. Do you know that that plane was coming to Orlando? Do you know what that means? Do you know how many happy children were on that airplane? It was the happiest bunch of passengers that Esther has been around in a long time. They were dancing, they were happy, they were eager. They were flying, and Esther thought, no one's crying. It was a really wonderful, happy, good time. A time so good that Esther was glad that she didn't miss it, and really glad that she didn't drive it. Sorry, John, he drives everywhere. He brings all the stuff with him. Esther's appreciating it. He likes to drive. New van, good new van, huh? Yeah. You can bring yourself into alignment. And if you can't bring yourself into alignment, then don't push forward. And don't try to wring the good out of something by making yourself do it. And teach your children through the clarity of your example. Granddaughter Kate, getting ready to graduate from college this month, was in Esther's office in San Antonio in her house. They'd been out, they stopped by, and then they were going somewhere else. And they were all, for whatever reason, standing in Esther's office because Esther had something new she wanted them to see. And Kate looked down and saw Esther's clipboard with her Swiss cheese processes on it. She grinned and pointed at it because she remembers when she was really little in middle school, and she had more homework to do that night than she wanted to do. But she wanted the results of it. She just didn't want to have to do it then. And Esther said, this is what I do when I got stuff that I want to do but don't want to do, need to do but don't really want to do. I just draw some circles on a page, and I write the things that I sort of kind of need to want to do on it. And then I just look it over, and I pick the one I hate the least. It's the path of least resistance, isn't it? Really don't want to do any of this stuff, but that doesn't look too bad right there. Then Esther does it, and then she takes a big highlighter and colors it just like a child would and feels satisfaction. I feel so good, and it primes the pump. It gets the juices flowing because there's lots of reasons that she wants to do all of those things. And it was so interesting to Esther to see this girl, this brilliant girl who has managed to go far away in the middle of a pandemic and make her way and find a way to accomplish a lot, and then see that grandma is still doing the same dumb things that she always has done, that make this moment easier and this moment easier and this moment easier. Because what you've got, what anybody's got right now, is this. Here it is. And you are where you are. You are where you are. And you know where you want to be. So what's the path of least resistance from where you are to where you want to be? Well, if you can't hook up with your inner being, but you're going to push yourself to it, that's what that process sort of is. It helps you to get the energy flowing. Have you ever had that experience where you really didn't want to do something, and then you began to do it, and then you started enjoying doing it, and then your pump was primed, the water was flowing, or whatever it is?
So I'm very motivated and inspired most of the time. So this is not an issue for me.
Well, we don't like motivation.
Yeah, I know.
But is a little bit that.
But I get interested in everything. Anyway, so I've been really taking this path of least resistance, and I didn't push my children. And my son finished the first semester A's and B's, like without homework, without effort. So that was like a surprise for me. Wow. That he could do that.
Well, it's a surprise to me that you had success without suffering. Is that what you're saying to us? I'm shocked that you had success without suffering. We would like you to get over that, all of you. Success doesn't come from suffering, because success is the opposite of suffering. Suffering is not succeeding. Suffering is not succeeding. Suffering is hanging on for dear life. Suffering is what a whole lot of people are doing, and then they teach it as if it's the way to go, because they don't see any way out of suffering, and they don't want to be the only one suffering. The more somebody is suffering, the more they encourage others to suffer, and the more someone is loving, the more they encourage others to love. And the more someone is having fun, the more they encourage somebody else to have fun. In other words, you don't encourage anything that you're not offering vibrationally. But all of that's neither here nor there. In other words, we don't mean for a minute that there's right and wrong going on there. We're just explaining the laws of the universe. This conversation all day, every day, if you're with us, we're talking about your point of attraction. And if you're talking about your child, we're talking about your son's point of attraction. And if we're talking about your son's point of attraction, we're talking about him in his physical body and him in his non-physical body. We're talking about the point of attraction between those two vantage points and the relationship between those two vantage points, which is why it becomes an emotional conversation all the time. And these days, more and more, we're wanting the conversation to not just be about how I feel. We're wanting you to understand that you can be an observer of things, or you can be an awarenesser of things. You can feel things that you can't see, or you can just prudently and wisely and sufferingly and determinedly, you can just look at what is and 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 notice it and talk about it and compare it and complain about it and make rules about it. You can just keep looking at what is, and in the process of that, you deny yourself all this motion, all this enthusiasm, all this energy that is calling you. That's suffering. That's what suffering is. Suffering is having evolved and not going. That's what suffering is. So 99% of the teachers on this planet encourage suffering. You want to be over there, and this is how you do it. Deprive yourself of sleep, deprive yourself of fun. 99% of teachers, you know why they teach that? They're not sleeping and they're not having fun. They're struggling. They feel like a victim. They feel like a victim, and you should strive. If my students will suffer, I'll be vindicated for my suffering. No, you won't. You'll just encourage suffering. And when they graduate, they won't remember you as something good about school.